Welcome to the weekly technical drop-in, and thank you for registering at short notice. Being the week after Easter is always difficult to get back in the groove. So thanks all again for making time for this session. All right, so today's session is predominantly going to be the same pattern as we had last week. We will talk through a quick update on a technical topic today, and Jason is going to help us with that. And then we'll open up for question and answers. We do have a few questions that have come in the last couple of days, but feel free to use the chat window to ask us if there are any questions. So today we have as panelists, today we have Jason Chong. Jason is our strategic solutions engineer and technologist. Jason focuses on technical insights across Australia and New Zealand. And Jason is going to talk through a few data management and insights topics today. We also have Patrick Fisher. Pat is our solutions engineer who focuses on our data management and insights portfolio. And then we have myself. I'm also going to be helping Pat and Jason moderate this session. So I've been specializing in data availability solutions and disaster recovery solutions. So that's pretty much what we have from a panelist point of view, and I'll hand it over to Jason to run through the technical insight topic for today. Over to you, Jason.
Hey, thanks, Amit. And look, as Amit said, yes, thanks for joining this week, given it is a short week, although I'm not sure if Easter felt like Easter this year. So look, what I thought I'd talk about today, I know last week we did a bit of a dive on Office 365 SaaS backup. Today I sort of thought, we've had a lot of questions from partners and customers around shift to remote working, some of the challenges that people are seeing, or questions they have around how do they operate in this new environment. So I basically sort of collated some of those questions, collated some thoughts, and today's session really is going to sort of just give an overview of some of these ideas and how Veritas can address them. And look, I'm going to keep this relatively interactive as well, so please feel free to use the chat window, and we'll try and address questions as they might come up through the next few slides. So with the change or the shift to remote working, I guess we break down the challenges, or at least I've broken down the challenges into sort of three areas that we're seeing a lot of questions being raised, and that is in the core, in the data center, in the cloud, and at the edge. So questions from the core, things like how do I change tapes today with travel restrictions? It's probably more so, especially in New Zealand, where it's a level 4 lockdown. But even here, with non-essential travel in Australia, can you really get to your office location to change a tape without picking up a fine? How do you move systems to cloud? An additional, I guess, challenge of that is being able to manage infrastructure physically. And an option to get past that possibly is to move some of those systems up into a cloud location where that infrastructure management burden is taken away and you can focus on the applications. Similarly, disaster recovery, ransomware challenges, especially ransomware challenges, where what can you do about that? And then once you start to move into the cloud, what's the challenges in the cloud itself? How do you protect your data? How do you enable that system availability of DR in the cloud, and potentially even move systems between clouds? And data governance and compliance. So depending on the industry and the types of data that you have, how do you know what data do you have, and is it are you going to have challenges, things like the Privacy Act, for instance? At the edge, people tend to forget about that. I'll talk a bit about, some of the challenges at the edge and some of the solutions Veritas has that can help there as well. So getting into the core, I looked at sort of, those key questions that we see, seen recently. A lot of our customers and partners have been asking about that, especially the backup tape issue. So what can you do? So if you can't, if you need an offsite copy and you can't go and change tapes, etc. The great news is both NetBackup and BackupExec have the ability to write directly to cloud storage, be it S3 or some private cloud object storage solution. There are various ways that can be done, both with optimized duplication, where you can minimize the amount of data being transferred. So something like NetBackup Cloud Catalyst, if you don't already have a Cloud Catalyst virtual machine or appliance deployed, it's relatively straightforward to set up a virtual machine, and then you can start to push data to cloud. BackupExec, again, the native dedupe can write to cloud directly, but it doesn't, unfortunately, it does have to rehydrate the data in the current version. You would need to use a supported third-party open source product called OpenDedupe to achieve a deduped data set, or in a pinch, you can still write directly to AWS S3 or Azure Blob. You just are not going to get the benefits of deduplication. And I think, look, what we'll do is we will have more deeper dives into some of these topics in future sessions. Today is really a high level sort of, here's some thoughts, and feel free to just reach out and ask us if you want more details. In terms of moving data, so Veritas has a number of tools and technologies to move data to the cloud. So NetBackup Air, which is auto image replication, you can use NetBackup Air to replicate your backup data into the cloud, and then using our other product, Veritas Resiliency Platform, VRP, to orchestrate a recovery into the cloud itself. Or you can do a manual recovery using just, using NetBackup in the cloud location and restore that data. VRP also has its own data movement tools, so you can do a replicated data set, both physical to virtual and virtual to virtual, up into Azure or AWS today. And then you need to look at what data that you are moving up into that cloud. Do you need to consider any compliance or governance actions on that data? Is there an opportunity to reduce the data set size? So Veritas Information Studio can help you there by doing a scan on that data, telling you what redundant, obsolete, trivial data that you might want to not move, or if there's any, you could run a compliance scan or a classification scan on some of the data sets, say file servers or NAS devices, and perform, and actually look at potentially things like Privacy Act, any privacy data, personal identifiable information, before you push it up into cloud. If we move into protecting the cloud, we have, last week we talked about SaaS backup, which is, how do you protect Office 365 or G Suite, for data protection inside the cloud itself. NetBackup, BackupExec, they can run inside cloud instances just like they run, on premise, and enable you to protect your data right to S3 buckets or blob storage, or even to another cloud location, to give you that offsite backup set. Similarly, InfoScale provides a software-defined storage layer that gives you a high availability capability within the cloud platforms that is better than what you might be able to achieve with the native capabilities of architecture of AWS, for instance, through clustering across AWS instances or availability zones. So VRP again allows you to replicate provide DR replication across the cloud platforms, either within the same platform or across multiple cloud platforms. And again, data visibility to support governance and compliance. You can still run InfoScale in the cloud, continue to monitor and manage what data that you have up there as unstructured data, and ensure you can meet your compliance requirements. So I'm going to pause here very briefly. I've thrown a lot of information out there. Feel free to type in the chat if there's anything you want me to clarify, or at the end of this, we also throw up an email address as well, where you're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we can have a discussion around any particular topics that you'd like to get further into.
Hey, Jason, this is I don't see any questions on the chat yet, but if I have to quickly summarize the flow here, we are talking about ensuring that we have the right level of protection and migration strategies put on for the core as well as cloud. And with cloud, we also include SaaS offerings, especially Office 365, and of course, being able to build your resiliency plan when it comes to your data availability and protection.
Thanks, Emmett. That's great. Yeah, that's a great summary. Thanks.
Or back here.
All right. So look, getting into the edge. So I guess this is an area we sometimes forget about nowadays, especially given a lot more sort of SaaS-based tools like Dropbox, OneDrive is very popular, and hence we tend to probably forget about data protection on the edge. Now, if you look at security on the edge, I guess most people will think about anti-malware. Some organizations will even have a level of data loss prevention tools implemented. But I think, data protection at the edge tends to be forgotten. And I think in today's challenges now, where a lot more people are working out of the office, with bandwidth constraints, etc., networking issues, content might get created at the edge locally and not actually be, placed in a OneDrive or SharePoint location that is being protected. So, we have a couple of tools again at the edge for data protection. Desktop laptop option is a standalone tool that you could deploy quickly into a cloud location such as Azure or AWS, or into your own data center, and then start to deploy agents and start to protect devices at the edge, be it laptops or PCs. Multiple of operating systems are supported, and the latest versions support VPN-less backup, so you can back up directly over the internet, and also access those files, those backup files, through various mechanisms such as a web browser, or even some apps for iOS or Android devices. So that's certainly an option I think people should start to consider if you've got a large remote workforce now, that you've got to manage that the data on those remote devices. System recovery is an image-based backup and disaster recovery solution. You can push that data up into different storage devices or even local storage devices. It's great for, I think, if you've got execs or business users that have certain applications that are critical. You need fast recovery mechanisms should their laptop get corrupted or die. And the ability to recover that data into, say, a virtual machine, for instance, to provide access while you're trying to recover, provide an alternative device. is certainly an option that you can look at with system recovery to provide, I guess, a disaster recovery mechanism at the edge. And lastly, pulling it all together, especially at the sort of the core and the cloud, we do also have our Aptar toolset, which enables that unified IT analytics across, hybrid cloud configurations. So that allows you to go out there, it's an agentless data collection, so it's fairly light touch to get it up and running. It goes out there, it scans your infrastructure, cloud consumption, cloud infrastructure, on-premise storage and compute, and starts to correlate that. And it also works with the backup tools, most of the major enterprise backup tools available, not just the Veritas ones, and starts to bring in that dashboard of, is your data protected, optimizing that or risk mitigation for understanding, what's protected, what's not, what have you got deployed into different locations. And you can then do metering as well as a side benefit. So look, that was the end of my sort of 5 to 10 minutes. Open to questions now. Please feel free to type in anything in the chat window. Myself, Pat, and Amit are here to answer them, and it doesn't have to be on the topics I've just raised. Anything you want to ask around Veritas technologies or solutions, please feel free to throw the questions out there.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And I'm actually in line to a few of those comments that you made, especially towards the later part of your topic, where I am also hearing a few people or concerns coming out from small and large organizations predominantly, that we have started to move towards the edge much faster than we anticipated. And that edge could just be a laptop, it just could be a cloud instance, an EC2 instance, or an Azure virtual machine, or even OneDrive for that matter. Now, the whole predicament is that the migration would have probably from core to edge would have probably taken a longer duration. However, with this COVID-19 and remote working situation, it has accelerated leaps and bounds. Now, all of this just ties in very clearly, and I have a few questions that have come in overnight, which I will start addressing one by one. But meanwhile, people, I've put everyone on mute. Feel free to ask your questions on the chat window, and we will take them in sequence and make sure that your questions are broad enough if you wish, or it could be as specific to the topics that we've just discussed. So the first question I have here is predominantly on the unstructured data on cloud. So the first question I have, and maybe Pat, I can get you to answer this one, is how can Veritas help manage unstructured data that has already been migrated or copied over to cloud? Now, this is predominantly, if I understand this question correctly, we're looking at getting more insights on unstructured data. This could be residing on OneDrive, or it could be Box, or even S3. Pat, do you want to share some insights?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, sort of, as Amit mentioned, the swift move onto remote working, we'll have to work from home, and being able to access data, far more efficiently, and by doing that is moving data to cloud. What that then brings is, okay, I've just forklifted all my data. Do I have data that shouldn't be sitting in cloud? Is there data that puts my business at risk? So at Veritas, we've got a solution that provides the ability to scan the supported content sources, sort of like your OneDrive, your Box, file servers, SIF shares. Right, so we perform two types of scanning. One is metadata, and that provides the visibility of what type of data it is, how old it is, who created it or owns it. Is that data relevant to my business? So you might find that you've got a whole bunch of data that's older than 5 years, and that data might be a terabyte in size, and that 1 terabyte that is so old is costing you money, right? The cloud cost of storing data is quite expensive long term. From that, we then also provide a second level of scanning by classifying that data. We can actually go in and go inside those files and determine what that data is. So you might have old files that are 5 years old, but that data might contain customer information or personal identifiable information that you may need to store somewhere else or keep in a more secure location. So we provide you that capability to, one, tell you what data it is, tell you what it is, and give you the ability to make decisions to then action, whether it be delete, move, secure.
And Pat, just to be clear, then what we're also providing is an insight about not just what the content is, but the ownership as well. So you then have the right level of accountability mapped back into the data ownership, and then you can take rightful decisions in terms of migration or compliance.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Cool. Thanks. That answers the question. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next question now, and maybe Jason, you could help us with this. I have a question which is twofold. The first one is how to manage SA contractor workforce remotely. So basically, remote management of contractors. And in changing circumstances, how architecture and design documents can be tailored as MVP for designs, seeking for vendors' help.
Yeah, so thanks, Amit. Look, I guess the remote contractor management, that's an interesting one. I don't think Veritas has any sort of solutions around actual, people management or contractor management as such. But I guess at the end of the day, if you've got, in place guidelines on your projects, what your expectations are, you've got some sort of, I guess, a time management system, and putting in place sort of check-ins, weekly or daily check-ins of your team, regardless of whether they're on site or remote. It's I guess that's probably how you manage that. I guess the question's pretty open. Feel free to reach out. I think we've got the name of the person who asked that, but we don't have any contact details. So look, if you want to reach out to us directly or reach out to myself, happy to have a discussion based on my previous experience working for HP and DXC in the managed services roles. And just sort of maybe unpack what you're trying to achieve there and suggest how you might go about it. As for the second question, I guess, sorry, Amit, could you just repeat the second part of the question for me, please?
Certainly. The second part of the question was in changing circumstances, how architecture and design documents can be tailored as MVP for designs. So I'm guessing this is around with the new change way of working and remote work. Is there any recommendations or best practices that can come in from a data protection or data architecture? And are there any considerations that we want to bring in? That's how I would interpret that question. Yes.
Sure. So look, we're assuming MVP is minimal viable product and reference architectures. I guess, there are some best practice architectures we have. Some may not be, publicly published around our solutions. I think the best way there is reach out to the Veritas team. If it's not already in a publicly available white paper or published, we might have some reference architectures available. I guess, again, developing those reference architectures, best practices around your specific, and I'm assuming this is coming from a partner, specific requirements and solutions that you provide out to the market. We have some baselines that we can certainly share, and then we can sort of work with you to help develop a specific, set of reference material that, might be relevant to what your organization's trying to deliver. I think most of our products have pretty standard, well-defined architectures today, and especially, the backup products in our availability product sets where they've been around for quite a long time. So look, feel free to reach out to us. I think certainly we can help, if not already available on the internet or on the Veritas publicly available reference material, then we can find what you might need and provide that as part of your development of some MVP solutions or reference architectures for your own use.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jason. And please reach out if you need further details or specific answers, and we'll be happy to help. All right. So the next question I have is predominantly on data transfer. What are the methods that I can transfer 500 terabytes of data from Australia to New Zealand data center? Okay, let me take that. So this is predominantly talking about bulk data migration or data transfer, and it could be, the volume could be in terabytes or even petabytes for that matter. Now it's important to understand what data type or what is the nature of the data that we're trying to transfer or migrate. Predominantly, if you're looking at the key way of looking at it is I can have unstructured data or I can have structured data. Let's start with structured data. So if I have applications creating large chunk of data, and there is a lot of backend databases that have been already created, one of the most optimized way of transferring structured data is to create a backup, have it deduplicated, and then have a consistent stream of data which is helping you copy from one side to the other. Now, what that helps you is to build that continuous stream, because there is going to be a duration when this data transfer is going to take over. So having that data consistency built over as you migrate or push the data to the other side is important. So one of the most optimized way is to create a backup and start making multiple copies of that backup, and then leverage the deduplication, compression, as well as encryption, because we're talking about data going over the wire, to then migrate this application or structured data over to the other side. So that's one of the ways. Now, again, I'm making a generalized approach here, just because we don't know what sort of data we're talking about. So backup is one option. The second option certainly is active replication. Now, active replication involves application awareness. Now, with Veritas Solutions portfolio, we have replication solutions at the file system level as well as at the block level. These replication solutions have inbuilt compression and aggregation put in together. So when we set up replication, of course, replication is going to be real time. It is going to take as much amount of time as your network bandwidth constraints are. But then an asynchronous replication from one side to the other can start giving you that duration, as well as ensure that we have the data consistency when we migrate. And of course, thirdly, we have unstructured data, which can be transferred over using file transfer mechanisms. Now, file transfer mechanisms generally have inbuilt optimization, but again, we need to be very clear on what sort of data we are trying to migrate, and hence the right mechanism can be implemented. But again, circling back, this is not a unique scenario. We've seen and we've heard customers trying to migrate large chunk of data, and so it's an approach that needs to be built in, very specific to how the data pattern is and what sort of data we're looking at. So that's pretty much how we would look at that. If there is any additional information on this or specific information we're looking for, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat window. No more questions. Again, a reminder to everyone on the call, if you have questions around any of the topics in data management or information management, feel free to type in the chat window. And I'm going to move on to the next question from our list then. All right. So, Jason, I'm going to probably push this question over to you. The question is predominantly getting backups moved to cloud. And I think as you referred to Cloud Catalyst in one of your slides, can the question is, what is the best way of getting data or backup data over to the cloud, and can we leverage any optimization mechanisms? Now, I'm just paraphrasing Cloud Catalyst here, as you mentioned, Jason.
Sure.
Can we leverage any optimization mechanisms when migrating data to cloud?
Yeah, look, so I guess, as I mentioned earlier, both NetBackup has a capability or a function called Cloud Catalyst. So assuming, you have the licenses, which, typically the complete edition or the capacity-based licensing, I think most of the capacity-based licensing options do include the Cloud Catalyst function as part of the licensing. You can spin up a virtual machine fairly quickly, depending on the amount of data you're trying to move and the source data set size. The VM starts at probably, we recommend a minimum of about 4 cores or 4 virtual cores, 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage. And there is a good white paper. Just do a quick Google search on NetBackup Cloud Catalyst, sizing, and there's a white paper there on sizing a virtual machine. But if you have issues with tapes today, you need to get that data off site quickly, and you got some resources and a VM resources or a spare server lying around, you can spin that up without too much problems. The other, actually, what I didn't mention before was also, we have, some people have concerns about, there's a reason why they still use tape, because they've got concerns around, data privacy and storing data in public cloud. We also do have a few partners, again, so reach out to us, who have, I guess, their own sort of private multi-tenant cloud solutions, where they provide a backup storage as a service mechanism for an offsite copy. So certainly, if you're not, if you've got concerns about public cloud, then we can also point you at a couple of partners that offer cloud, storage services as well for backups. And in fact, some of those partners have our NetBackup appliances, so you don't even need to do a Cloud Catalyst. For instance, you could just do a direct, MSDP pull, replication from your on-site location to off-site location. Yeah, so look, I think it's pretty much it. It's relatively easy to spin that up as a VM, and you can get going fairly quickly as long as you've got the licensing. If you don't, reach out to your sales team, and again, it's a software license. We can organize that pretty quickly.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jason. So optimizing backup data before pushing to cloud is probably the most way of getting out of the tapes. So, yep, thanks, Jason, for that. I am just going to check on the chat window for any other questions. All right, I will then go back to my list. All right, this question is particularly around endpoints and laptops specifically. And the question is, what are the options and scenarios that we should consider when it comes to protecting desktops or laptops? Jason, do you want to take that one as well?
Yeah, sure. So look, I guess the two solutions we have with desktop laptop option, the DLO option is focused around data protection. So you can deploy an agent out there. If you don't have the infrastructure today, again, you could spin up an instance in Azure or AWS and utilize storage in the cloud as well as the compute. And then get agents out there onto your remote devices. And that can start to protect data locally on those devices. That scales quite well. I think the largest instance I've heard of is around 300,000 endpoints up in the US and Europe. So, it's certainly I guess nowadays people kind of forget about the desktops or the endpoints because of things like OneDrive and Box and other cloud-based storage mechanisms, SharePoint, for instance. But I think nowadays we notice not everyone has the best internet connection, depending on what location or where you are at in the country, and because of that, people are still resorting to creating content locally and storing content locally. So I guess that is a consideration to have. With system recovery, our other tool, again, as I mentioned before, it's a product that can image your laptop, system partition, applications, as well as the data. And if you don't have cloud capabilities, or you've got really low bandwidth connections, or you might be on a mobile data connection and you don't want to send too much data up to the cloud, then buy a local USB drive and at least have a copy of your system that can be recoverable off a USB drive, for instance, or a flash drive. And again, you might not deploy that to every single user in your organization, but you might have a few key users that you need to be able to get them back up and running quickly should something happen to their end device.
Precisely, and in the world of remote IT operations, where even the IT teams are unable to get access to systems as they would when people work from office or corporate networks, this option is one of those safeguards which can make sure that you get the right level of protection as well as recovery mechanism. Cool. Thanks, Jason. Thank you.
I actually just had another thought, Emmett. Just system recovery as well. As much as I put it in the desktop bucket, and it's probably a tool that we don't talk about enough down this way, it also protects servers and servers in the cloud. So it's a complementary tool for the backup products, where if you've got certain systems, either remote in a data center, or even a remote office, or in Azure or AWS, the ability to quickly recover from a system image is also I guess an option, and certainly the system recovery tool isn't limited to desktops. It also supports most server types as well, Linux and Windows, and we do have some pretty large instances deployed globally. I believe up to 20,000 sort of managed system recovery endpoints. So it's as much as I categorize it as a desktop recovery tool, it can also be used quite effectively for lights out recovery for remote sites, or servers, and in the cloud as well.
Brilliant. That helps, Jason. Thanks. All right, cool. I'm going to move on to the next couple of questions. These questions are predominantly getting into specifics of NetBackup. So the first question we have is on NetBackup is, we have a number of servers where remote agent security certificate has expired. We cannot renew the certificate from the backup server. How do we renew certificate from the original backup server? All right. So I'm going to take this one. So assumption that I'm going to make is when we talk about backup, sir, it is net backup, and we are looking at net backup, secure communications, especially with enabled security. The certificate, if it is expired, we would recommend you to start with a support ticket. Where our support engineers would be able to help you renew the certificate. But typically, what happens is when the certificate is about to expire, a few days prior to that, we will have our net backup master server or the security certificate authority start, renewing the certificates on trusted clients. So there will be an auto corrective mechanism there if the certificate is about to expire. So proactively, we will renew securely the trusted client certificate. However, in scenarios where that has not happened for some reason, our support organization should be able to, give you a path or a way to do that. Feel free to send us the support ticket number once you have a case raised, and we will from our side we will help you follow that up and get you to a resolution. Jason, Pat, did you have any additional comments on that?
No, I think you're right. Look, I mean, there is documentation on if you've got issues where you've changed the master server or there's been some issue with the certificate authority. There are steps to take. But yeah, definitely recommend get a support ticket raised, and then we can get the right resources to support you on that.
Brilliant. All right. So, that takes it to the next one. So the other net backup question I have is that's on the chat window. Is does net backup have capacity to back up Azure objects such as managed SQL instances, Azure VMs, and blob storage? So I'm going to take a stab at this, and I also have a net backup expert on the call from Veritas, Ranga. So Ranga, I'm going to get started with this, and feel free to chime in with your thoughts. So net backup has capability of backing up Azure instances, so the virtual machines predominantly can be backed up. When it comes to cloud native workloads, especially Azure databases and platform as a service, we predominantly see data protection being done via snapshots. Now we do have our net backup extension, which is called Cloud Point, which enables us to protect and build data protection policies using snapshots. So we have an ability to do that, and then we also have the ability to deduplicate data or backup images in Azure and have the right level of retention policies applied, which could then mean that you have backups retained in Azure Object Storage, or if you want, you can push it down on-prem if that's one of your use cases. So that's where we have the data protection capabilities. Ranga, did you want to add any additional thoughts there?
That's right. So we do protect as a part of a snapshot, but as a PaaS offering, so it's on the roadmap. So we are planning to get that out.
Awesome. All right. So that helps, and as we said in the beginning, right? If you need any specific support questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll help you get the right compatibility and supported version list, and we can then help you frame that solution together as well. All right. So the next question I have is, this is from a question that came overnight again, and maybe if Jeff is on the line, I'll probably have you, Jeff, answer this. Can Veritas deliver end-to-end service IT orchestration? I'm assuming that this question is around IT orchestration, not just from a data management point of view, but an end-to-end orchestration. Jeff, are you online?
Yes, I am. Hopefully you can hear me all okay. Good question. Maybe I'll answer it this way. We certainly work with a lot of large companies. One recent conversation I had with a head of infrastructure and also a conversation with a head of risk, risk being part of the organisation that looks after business continuity planning, said to me, is it okay, do you think, in 2020, this is a very, very large enterprise, do you think this is okay in 2020 that organisations recover from tape as part of their DR strategy for certain applications? My answer to that was, in 2020, you may have applications classified based on recovery point and recovery time objectives. You may have tier 1 applications that just can't go down or must be up and available within minutes, in some cases even seconds. You may have tier 2 applications that could be hours, and tier 3 applications that can be days as an example. Now, it is okay based on how you classify the risk and the posture and the value of those applications to the business, but it's not okay to be using people's hands to do that anymore. We need to use some form of orchestrator that can at least look at how applications or whole IT services can be brought back online. So as an example of that, it could be think of a 3-tier application. It could be an Oracle backend. It could be a middleware layer in between and web-based clients. How do you fundamentally bring up that application and its dependencies? Dependencies could be DNS settings on Cisco routers. It could be LDAP settings to support load balancers, just as examples, or VIPs to support load balancers. How do you bring all that over, and how do you run book that? So how do you do it in such a way that dependencies are mapped between components, the database comes up first, the middleware comes up second, the load balancers, say, are brought online, they authenticate via some sort of SSL, they might even authenticate via LDAP, DNS settings are changed to reroute traffic to a different location. Can you effectively run book that? What if you're working with clusters and you need to fail over nodes? Can you do all of that? Well, Veritas provides capabilities that we call in broad terms the availability fabric to do that. The solution elements there are the likes of the resiliency platform, or VRP. What that does is allows you to run book and drag and drop components in a workflow. It uses APIs to connect to all of those technologies pretty much I've discussed. And I guess the thing I want to leave you with in terms of answering the question would be, I don't think it's appropriate now. I mean, everyone can do it. It's a bit me too, to be able to pick up a virtual machine and move it from one location to another. People in risk, CTOs, CTO functions, tech strategists, enterprise architects, come to my team and the team here, the panel, and often talk to us about how do you orchestrate a service. We've got the right people in terms of professional services to help with that, the right technologies to make sure you can move an entire IT service more or less at the click of a button. I find that really exciting. It's certainly of a lot of interest in the FSI space, the telco space, the banking space, insurance, but you've got tier 1 to tier 3 applications, and one size doesn't necessarily fit all, but here at Veritas we've got technologies that help across all of those areas, integrating all the way into your backup infrastructure. I hope I addressed the question.
Yes, you did, Jeff. And it's important that you made a very, very critical point there, that it's all about RTOs and knowing what your risk level is with your RTO. Now, one of those things that keeps coming back is with disaster recovery, and having your mitigation plan in place has always been one of the focuses. But who would have thought that pandemics can also drive you into that mode? And today everybody is now revalidating their DR plans, and it's not just the plan, but the entire 250-page runbook automation document that they have written is what people are now looking at that being the bottleneck. If I need 25 people run the 200-page document, that means that we have a bottleneck. And this is where I think you're right. Veritas can bring in that expertise. We've been doing this for more than 2 decades now, where we enable our customers build that automation, service automation with dependencies. So thanks. I think that covers it, Jeff. Thanks. Brilliant. All right. So the next question I have is from BackupExec point of view, and I'm going to turn that question in terms of what are the key advantages or differentiators that BackupExec has over the competition. And I might just get Ranga to answer that for us. Ranga, are you online?
Sure. Thanks for that question. Look, BackupExec has got years of experience in terms of protecting workloads, and VM is no exception. So we can protect VMs instantly. So agentless backups, granular restores. So whether it is application backup, in a single pass, it can look at files, applications, databases, and you could help restore that as a single pass. You could go through that. And then you could ensure that all VMs are protected. And we provide global deduplication, in the sense it's not a per job dedupe, rather it's a global dedupe that we provide, and it's a forever incremental backup where we ensure we perform something called as accelerator backups, which quickens your full backups to complete in incremental time frame. Performance is way better because of the shallow cataloging that we use. And then the new feature that has come up with BackupExec is instant recovery to Azure locations, which means it can give you near zero recovery time objective. So these are some of the various features that where we are in terms of the competition. So that's where the edge is, easier interface, and you can use VM-based backups.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ranga. And I'm sure if there is further interest, do reach out to us, and we should be able to give you specific, differentiators or advantages that should help. All right. So the next question, actually, I think we have exhausted the list here. Right. So there was one question that came in, and I put it right at the bottom of the list just because it was a good conclusion or a summary. But I think, Ranga, you answered that. Is, what is the story for BackupExec and cloud? So, I'm just going to summarize that very quickly, that, BackupExec has, an ability to write data to object storage, as well as, get you that deduplication put in as well. So, I think we've got that covered. And, as you can see, we have our contact information on the slide. Feel free to send us any questions you have, any feedback that you have from these 2 sessions that we've had. Last week, we did SaaS 101, including data protection for SaaS. This week, we wanted to get more broader into data management, especially with remote working and edge solutions. And the next session, which is going to be on next Wednesday, we will want to talk about how Veritas can help address ransomware and how you can, build up your ransomware defense strategy. So looking forward to talk to you at that point. 22nd April is next week. We will share our registration links where you can populate your questions. And we will also make sure that, if you have any feedback, feel free to write it over to that email address, and we will happily incorporate those. Cool. All right. Any other closing comments from the panel? Jason, Jeff, Pat, and Ranga?
Look, thanks everyone for attending. It's a new world. It's interesting times. This is something that we wanted to do, just to reach out to all of you, our customer base or prospective customer base. There's nothing off the table here. More than happy to follow up with you guys, or you know how to find us now. Should there be anything else you want to discuss on this particular topic, or any topic can be more, I guess, broader or have a bit more breadth associated to it in terms of what challenges you've got, where do you think we could help, or could we refer you on to someone else? It's all about relationships. So from my perspective, thanks again for your time and for sticking with the session today.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. And we will provide this slide deck over to all the people who've registered on the website. If you haven't registered, feel free to send out an email to our contact email ID, and we will then be able to flick you the pack for today. All right. Thank you so much for attending. Have a good rest of the week and stay home, stay safe. Speak soon next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you all.
Thanks, Amit and the
Bye.
team.